Hi there, Adam Drummond here from wagga-wagga.tv. It's the online TV program all about people, places and property. I'm here at the Blessed Bean and I'm very excited because I'm joined by someone whose life is about to change. It's Mr. Mark Grentell, the writer, producer and director of Backyard Ashes. Thanks for coming on board, mate.
Pleasure, Ramo. Thank you.
Now, a lot of people are saying this guy's kind of come from nowhere. Where has he come from? I remember you as a performer here in Wagga. I've seen you in fishnet stockings playing Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show, and yet here you are directing a little Aussie battler film that's going pretty well. Where did you change from performer to behind the lens?
Actually, in Wagga, I think I've spent far too much time in fishnets for the average man.
Great legs too, by the way. I have to point that out.
Yeah, they take a lot of work at the gym, but they're worth it. It's nice to be appreciated. No, actually, I did a lot of performing here since I was a kid. I started in amateur musicals, actually pulling ropes backstage.
Yeah, right.
Was my first ever theatre gig, and then eventually I think I graduated to playing a monk in The King and I, and then eventually got on stage and went, oh, I like this stage stuff, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And found out I had a propensity to show off and make people laugh. So I just did lots of performing here for many, many years. And I guess as you perform, you start to learn other crafts and you start to see what makes a performance good. And you start to learn elements, and when you grow up in a regional area, you have to produce all your own work, of course.
Yeah.
So you start developing producing skills. And then I guess the switch is just an organic one from director to actor. You don't make the conscious decision. Sometimes it just comes to you.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about your background with your training as well, because you've just finished up at NIDA a couple of years ago, which is a very, very difficult thing to get into as an actor and a director.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get into and even harder to stay in there because it's really long hours and a lot of work, but it's an incredible experience. So I did a lot of theatre here at Wagga and produced a lot of shows and musicals within the community, and I'd helped a few kids audition for WAPA and NIDA themselves and get in, and then one kid actually called me out on it one day and said, well, why don't you go to NIDA? And I was like, hush but fair.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I didn't try myself. And it was a dream I had when I was 17, but sort of other things came up and I travelled and did a lot of other things. So yeah, when I was 28, I applied for NIDA and was lucky enough to get in on my first go into the directing course. And my wife and I just made the decision to move to Sydney and change our whole lives and scrape by and study there for 12 months.
And scraping by is something that you do in this industry. Like, the entertainment industry is very fickle. It's hard to rub two coins together, as we all know. But did you think I might go into NIDA as an actor, or it was always going to be as a director? Did you think you'd give it a go as a performer?
No, I always felt like I had a better skill set or a leadership ability in the directing capacity.
Yep.
I enjoyed performing, but mostly doing stand-up comedy or comic performances or cabarets.
Yep.
I wasn't as interested in the really deep emotional discovery stuff of actors. I find it fascinating and I love directing and I love seeing actors do that.
Yep.
But it's just not something that I found was my cup of tea. But I found that I had a propensity to understand emotion and understand people's conveyance of that. And so I went into directing instead. And I just find it far more rewarding that I can get that performance to a certain level and you still feel like you're part of the performance as well when you've directed it to that level.
Yeah, that's right, because you're spending most of the time telling people what to do as opposed to being told what to do. So it's a different role altogether, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but I've always been a collaborative person. So even when you work in Wagga, you're always working with the community, with a bunch of people. So I find directing to be quite collaborative, and if you use the other artists, whether it's your cameraman or whether it's your actor or whether it's your set designer, whoever you're working with, if you collaborate in that process, I tend to find that you can get I find that far more fulfilling, that you shared the experience rather than having the egotistical approach of me, and you're the guide of it and the controller of it and the beacon of hope for everybody. I find it's a much better process to be a facilitator of everybody's skills.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that as well, because as we were saying, the fickle entertainment industry, everyone's got to have a day job as well. And what a lot of people don't know about you is you've done a lot of work with docs and some of the kids that have found themselves misplaced in the community. Tell us about that experience and some of the stories that you've come across.
I guess I always had two passions in life. One was always theatre or the creative arts, and the other one was I guess I always had an affinity for working with young people. It's just my grandfather was a primary school teacher and a role model in his community for many, many years, and I think when you grow up seeing that, it's something you aspire to. So I trained as a primary school teacher here in Wagga for 4 years, and I taught as a primary school teacher and high school teacher for a long time, for a few years. But I've always taught youth theatre. So when I went to Sydney, I needed to earn a crust, and I never wanted to do a job that was just a job.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something that I believed in or was passionate about. And so I found a job working with Life Without Barriers, who are sort of an affiliate company of the Department of Child Services.
Yep.
And I work to support young kids who have been removed from their families for a variety of reasons. And it's one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had in my life. I think it's nice when you do a creative pursuit or a job that's a passion of yours, that if you have a secondary job that is completely different,
Yep.
it helps you appreciate it. You think like solving a directing problem or finding more money for your film is the end of the world, and then you turn up on a Saturday morning to a kid who's been abandoned since he was 2 years old, and you're like, oh no, life's pretty good.
Yeah, it puts everything into perspective, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
And now on to the big topic of Wagga Wagga at the moment. You can't go anywhere and not hear the words backyard ashes. This is something that you and Coxie got onto about. Well, Coxie's been working on this for 10 years, and then you came on board about 5 years ago. At what stage was the script up to when you came on board?
Well, I've actually been talking to Coxie about it for 10 years. He had the idea almost after every show since 2001. In the foyer opening night or closing night, we'd always go, oh, we should write that film. So that was way back in 2001 when I was playing like Jerry Lewis or something like that in a cabaret. And then when I got into NIDA, I don't know, just a bolt of inspiration hit, and I started to see things were possible and look at things in a different perspective. And I just said to Coxie, well, let's write it now. Like, I'm here, let's do weekends and evenings, and we'll just get started and see where we get to. So we literally hadn't put pen to paper or pen to, no one uses paper anymore, to typewriter or iPad or laptop. So I did some research on script structure and writing screenplays, and we just got started, and we started drafting scenes, and scenes turned into beats, and beats turned into half a synopsis, and we just evolved. And then by the end of that year, by the end of NIDA, I graduated in November 7th or something in 08, and we had a script that week that was like 125 pages, but it was all just a big idea on paper.
Yeah.
But that's the impetus. Lots of people have good ideas for films and ideas for script and ideas for short plays and musicals and everything, but unless you physically write it down, unless you get it into some eventuation, some physical form, you can't get it any further.
Never going to happen.
Yeah, everyone's got ideas, but...
And fast forward, a decade later, and probably one of the best nights of your life, I would assume, was last Wednesday when the film opened. That was absolutely spectacular. What we'll do is we'll actually take a little break and have a look at some of the highlights of the premiere of Backyard Ashes. And then when we come back, we'll be in the backyard of Mark's grandmother's house where most of the film was shot. Check this out. All of Wagga has turned out to see the premiere of Backyard Ashes. Let's see if we can get them jumping for joy, get a bit of a cheer out of the Wagga people here. How about a cheer for Backyard Ashes? We've just come out of the premiere of Backyard Ashes, Wagga Wagga's first feature film. What did you think?
I thought it was amazing. I loved it.
I thought it was fabulous. I'd recommend that everybody go and see it. It was really fantastic.
Fantastic, really tight, really good, fantastic performances.
Bloody marvellous.
I reckon the film was absolutely rip-roaring brilliant.
Great night, great movie.
And I reckon the film's going to do brilliantly.
It was a credit to everyone involved.
Terrific representation of backyard cricket, and it was something that my English father would be proud of.
I loved it. It was just amazing to see such a, community-based project.
Awesome. I was very excited to see it, and I was not disappointed.
Oh, it was so funny.
Lots of little in-jokes in there.
Bloody brilliant, mate.
Mate, spectacular.
Now, I'll put you on the spot. Out of 10, what do you give it?
11.
10 out of 10.
I loved it. It was a great movie.
I thought it was amazing. It really was.
Maybe a tad too much gas.
So there we go. What a buzz. Mate, how was the heart racing that night when you were for the first time going to be showing your film to the masses? Everyone turned out.
It was pretty incredible. Like, I don't think you can ever prepare yourself for that sort of experience or that number of people turning up. So when the car pulled into the cinema And I was thinking, is there going to be like 20 people? Or I didn't expect there to be hundreds upon hundreds of people lining up and going crazy for the film. So
well, there's over 750 people that rocked up. So, I mean, the car park was packed and all the streets were packed and just about every man, woman and their dog was there.
Yeah, literally the dog was there too, yeah.
I actually interviewed the dog
he's
from
good.
the film.
He's got a good personality, yeah.
He's got a
short answers, but...
firm handshake.
Yeah, he does.
Hey, a lot of people are going, this guy's just come out of NIDA, he's done a little bit of stuff in his fishnet stockings. How on earth does he manage to get the people into this film? You got John Wood. Do you go through the agents or do you come up with conversations with the people directly? How on earth did you get these big names involved?
Perseverance, but a bit of both. Really, the quality of the script was what attracted most people. And again, if you've got a good idea, you have to put it on paper and then you can send it to people and they'll agree that it's a good idea or not. So we felt it was. I contacted their agents. I found out who their agent was through an online casting website. And then I just called them directly and said, I'm looking to do a feature film. If you're interested, I can send you a copy of the script. So they sent the script and they do their duty of care and send it on to the actor. And then the actors liked it. And then I met with everybody individually. So I met John at the Cat Awards in Canberra. I met Andy in Melbourne at a cafe at the Malt House. I met Felix at NIDA and Beck. I met everybody in person for the film and flew myself there or drove there to their place to have an interview with them or just sort of, a coffee and a catch-up. But it was always the strength of the script and their belief in the project and I guess my passion for it and they were on board.
And one of the most difficult things that you pulled off was getting this cinematographer who'd just come off The Great Gatsby and Goddess, and he doesn't usually look at scripts and he was going to do that with Backyard Ashes. He told me himself, I didn't want to open it up because it meant I might have to commit to it, and then he did. How was it working with Damien Whyville?
Damien was amazing. I mean, Anne Robinson, my co-producer, was a big part of getting Damien involved. So I think I got a chance to meet with Damo, and he said that to me himself. He was like, when he read the script, he was half hoping it would be terrible, so it'd be easier to say no. And then he read the script and he said, "Oh, it's really good. I think I've got to make this film." Because again, he's made a lot of Australian films, but nothing that's this relatable or this genuinely Australian. They're all dark and gritty and hearty dramas, but this one's more lighthearted and doesn't take itself so seriously. So Damien's incredible. He's an incredibly generous cinematographer. I mean, his skill set is second to none. So he knows exactly what he's doing with every single shot, and he's been on the biggest sets in the world. So I always knew I was in good hands, and as a first-time director, it was essential that we get an experienced cinematographer to shoot the film. So he was amazing. He works so well with the actors. He's very patient, but he's very creative, and we developed a shorthand very quickly about how we were going to work and how we were going to shoot things.
He's actually one of the most calm people I've ever met, considering the scope of this. I mean, even though we talk about this low-budget battler film, the scope of it was quite large. I mean, I remember one day when it was raining right here in the backyard. We're in Grandma's backyard here where Backyard Ashes was filmed, and this huge canopy just went over the top of the whole yard, and we shot as if it was in sunlight. I mean, how was that experience dealing with people that had been in so many things before? You're a first-time director and you're telling them what to do. Was it a little bit nerve-wracking to start off, or did you find your rhythm?
It was very nerve-wracking, yeah. You wouldn't be human unless you felt nervous about it coming up. But I knew I had Damien, and then we had Mark Lindemann, who's his gaff, and we had Benny Hyde, who are his group. So we have amazing, equipment. So the minute it rains, you can pop up a screen and off you keep going. And if you need tracks, they lay them down and they get moving. And if you need something wedged, it's there. If you need the camera set up. So you've got an immensely professional crew. You've got a great cinematographer, and you've got people willing to help out and do what they need. And we had good Australian talent. So we always knew we'd need this balance. We didn't have the budget to get a full professional crew and a full professional cast. So I wanted to put the right people in the best spots. And Anne and I and Coxie decided to try and fill those key roles with professionals like Debbie Mueller for makeup and that as well, and Danielle Alexander and Kate Roberts. So we had all our heads of department were professionals, and everyone below them were either students who were in their second or third year or studying, or people who were really passionate about what they do. And I guess just that conglomeration of youthful enthusiasm and wizened experience was the perfect mesh to just get everything done to the standard it needed to be done.
And of course, having come from NIDA, you were able to call on some mates to be in the film as well. Some of the actors were from NIDA as well. What was it like to work with some of your mates on your first baby?
Oh, it's incredible. You want to share that with your friends like Marty Harper and Andy Cunningham and Baron Schwert and Dan Bewley, all those guys, or Dan Krieg. You want to be able to share those experiences with them, and it's nice to know that even though there's smaller roles in the film, you want to know that there's a good actor behind it,
Yeah.
so that they're taking it seriously and they're giving everything to that role, because there's no small roles, only small actors. And those guys take them very seriously and they give everything to each particular part, and no one was phoning it in. So you knew, okay, they're a trained actor with professional screen experience, that role is handled. And that's one less thing I have to worry about. So I know the camera's there, I know the actors are great, I know I've got a great production team. So we had this crew behind us, and then you just feel confident that you can let them do their thing.
When you shot the whole thing in 4 weeks, which is just remarkable in itself, but what were some of the challenges that you were faced with in pre-production, during production and post-production? What are some of the big challenges you've come across?
Just the resources. When you've got such a small team and a small budget, money buys support, and when you don't have the money, you can't always get the support. So if you need I had to lay the grass myself on the first go, and I had to water the grass every night.
No, not the director.
Yes, I was here, and then I had the neighbour who's also a greenskeeper, Logan, would help roll the pitch. So I had a bit of support there, but little things like that, planning shooting scripts that you have to do all on your own, or with just little bits of support here and there. They're the hard things in pre-production, because pre-production is pivotal. Preparation is everything when shooting a film, and we did all we humanly could. But then we were lucky we had such an amazing team that production went as smoothly as any film set with our resources could, and if not better than anyone that's ever done it like that before. So that was fine as we got through. And really then it was just battling the hours. It's 16 to 18 hour days or 20 hour days. And
lights.
We can't stop shooting for a whole day like Baz might for Gatsby, because that cloud's in the way for 2 hours.
Yeah.
We're shooting whether you like it or not.
That's right.
We had the set got rained out on that day you were talking about, and this whole backyard turned to mud because we had 100 extras on it. And then the next morning, a local grass company from Tarcoola Turf turns up with a truck full of grass, and we relayed the lawn in an hour in the morning. So we had a brand new backyard. So all those hassles you'd usually have in production that you and your team would have to solve, we had a whole community. We had, the publican, we had truck drivers, we had helicopter pilots, we had grass companies, we had, caterers and accommodation. We had these people that were all willing to chip in and help you solve any issue that came up. So I think that community support was what got us through the really, really tricky parts of production.
Yeah, everyone just dropped everything and ran. They didn't even walk off. They just ran off to help solve problems, didn't they, on the spot? So we're sitting here in Grandma's backyard. She gave it up for 4 or 5 weeks, and there's a few noticeable things that have changed here. I've noticed the barbecue's no longer there, where, spoiler alert, Dexter,
has an unfortunate accident.
Has his little accident. 2 accidents, because he wheezes on it too.
Yes, he
Remember?
does. Yeah, a couple of accidents.
The fence has changed because it was a paling fence, and the hole there. We've got the sheds the same behind, but the landscaping's a bit different. How were your family to work with? What on earth would allow them to go, yeah, no, that's cool, you can just have the run of the mill for 6 weeks?
Naivety was the main thing. They didn't really know what they were in for. So I kind of kept that ace up my sleeve, and I tried to warn them. It's probably going to be a bit bigger than you think it might be, but we'll do our best to take care of you. And everyone was incredibly generous with supporting Grandma and my parents and making sure they were very respectful that this was their living space. But they were amazing. You can't make these films without an incredible family behind you. And if you turn up and say, I've got to do this and I've got to do it in 30 minutes, and they're like, yep, okay, what do you need?
Yeah.
If you need a car, and they bring it over. If you need something moved, and they get it done. If you need something built, they help you do it. Things like that, you can't rely on anyone but family in those situations. So when I need a barbecue installed, Dad gets his workmates and they come over and drop their paintbrushes and turn up and help me put this in place. And
they built the barbecue for the film.
We had a props company, Guerrilla Construction in Sydney, who built that. So they built the shell and we put the barbecue into it.
Right.
But we had to install it here, so we had to get it delivered, and it's a heavy thing.
Here I am thinking it was Grandma's barbecue, but it was made for the film.
No, it's a prop.
Yeah,
it's a fake barbecue. Even the fence was one of those old defence housing fences that was on a scrap heap, and we salvaged it and had Eugene Heffernan, a local builder, install it. So he came in and built and put the fence in and screwed it in. So it was a prop fence on both sides. And even the pitch was mown and grown for the purposes of the film. We had to step it out and mark it out and grow the pitch as well, and as we went through, but it's all fake.
That's incredible.
Film trickery.
Smoke and mirrors of filmmaking.
But the house is the same.
The house
Both
is
yards
the same.
are the same. The unit's the same.
Grandma's the same.
That's all it was, really. And we put a fake water tank over there as well, because we wanted...
Oh, that's right. They're hitting up, because that's a Don Bradman
little
thing.
Don Bradman homage.
Yeah.
We wanted a little water tank, so we couldn't get a water tank, so we just bent some tin and built a fake one around Grandma's hot water system. awesome.
and of course, Lex, who was looking down there with Alice on all the games, he was a bit of a Bradman homage as well. There's a few things,
A few stickers in the background. And even that unit, for example, is on the corner of this block. That unit, the lease ran out in October, so I was able to lease that particular unit for a month of shooting.
Just luck.
Just pure fate, luck, whatever you want to call it. So that was our production office slash set location slash everything, slash where my producer Anne stayed in horrible conditions.
Did she stay in one of those
Anne
units?
stayed up in that unit. It was also the production office in the lounge room, and in the balcony was the set location. And Kennard's Hire gave us a big scissor lift to get up to the back of the room. So made miracles. So we didn't think we could fit the Kennard's Hire scissor lift in there, but the boys came around and made it work. And
wow.
Nothing like a bit of country ingenuity to go, no, you just got to cut that clothesline out, move that around here, and there you go. And up
Bang, up. And you've actually helped them out because I noticed there's a couple of for sale signs up in these units here,
Yes.
and the value's gone up at least 100,000.
Oh, yeah, we're pumping them right up.
They hadn't changed for 20 years, and all of a sudden they're up 100,000.
As seen in Backyard Ashes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of the things that is a little bit different about this film is the way you've distributed it. You've gone regional. Tell us about some of the challenges that Australian films face, and in particular the battles ahead for Backyard Ashes.
Well, we intentionally wanted to do that. Our distributor, Umbrella Entertainment, we always discussed when we signed on that we didn't want to do what every other Australian film has done in the last 5 years, which is go out on big and then just fizzle. You go on 100 screens and you average $1.57 a screening, and the film just disappears. And so we had to do something differently, and we made the film regionally. We funded the film regionally. Wagga owns the film literally with investors and supporters and sponsors. So there was never going to be any other place to premiere and open it. And we thought, okay, what are some similar places around here that would take the film as well? And Orange came on board, Tamworth and Albury, and now it's expanding out to Leeton and Griffith and Echuca and Tumut and Temora and Tumbarumba and Young. So more regional towns are getting the film first. So we're doing it a bit backwards, but you've got to try things differently these days, and if you always do what everyone's always done, you'll always get what they've always got. So we wanted to do it a bit differently. So it's a riskier strategy, and no one expected it to go as well as it did. We didn't expect to have the highest per screen average for any Australian film last weekend, and to have amazing reviews, and to have audiences loving the film, and finally feeling like there's an Australian film they can connect to and relate to. There's been some amazing Australian films in the last few years, like competing in international markets and festivals, but they're not our story. They're not my story. I don't stuff bodies in the barrel every weekend, and I don't have a heroin kingpin in my family, and these are great stories, but they're not my story.
Yeah.
So we wanted something people could relate to, and we hadn't seen that since like The Castle or since Kenny, and so we said, let's take it to the people. Let's go grassroots and take it to the people who helped us make the film. And they've embraced it wholeheartedly. And now they're desperately getting everyone else they can to see the film. And we're hoping that that other cinemas and people screening the film will take notice and see this is a film people want to see. And they'll put it in their screens, and more people can go along and support this little Aussie film.
And it certainly is working. I mean, the word of mouth around Australia, from Perth up to Ipswich, there's a drive-in cinema somewhere that wants it. It really is working, this word of mouth. And as you say, it's because of how relatable the characters are to the people that are watching it. But kudos as well, because I know that the box office takings came in the other day and you're on just 4 screens and it took like 50 grand or something, which is just remarkable. And on ratio beat 4 for the same weekend, on ratio by about 3, I think. What were the numbers on that?
It was on like 500 or 600 screens and did $1 million or something like that. But there were other films, Australian films and international films that opened last weekend as well, and made less money than us on 100 screens. So we were the only film in the top 20 on single-digit screens, and we were still in the top 20. So we know a lot of that's local support, but now it's beyond that. People are supporting the film and loving the film genuinely, and people will tell you if they like it or not. And we're getting told that they like it, and more people want it. And I think we got to start supporting these Australian films. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible for any of us to get content onto these screens unless we get behind them. And we wanted this to be a film that people could be proud of and that they could find and support. And people are starting to do that now. So as some screen space opens up, there's always going to be a Thor 2 or a Hulk 7 or an Avengers 59. They're always going to be coming in, but we've got to support Australian content when it comes out. and get it out there.
And people they're craving for this sort of thing. Mate, that'll wrap it up. Thanks very much for your time. It's awesome. I can't believe that we've managed to find a couple of hours where you weren't doing something in these weeks. You've been off the hook with all the media from around Australia, and good luck with it. I do hope that we get a national release. Almost certain it will, the way that it's been talked about.
It'd be un-Australian not to.
It'd be un-Australian not to. If you can, go out and tell your local cinema if it's not showing it, they should be showing Backyard Ashes. I'm joined with Mark Grentell. Thanks again, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Adam Drummond here from WaggaWagga.tv, brought to you by Livestream Australia and Wagga Wagga Web. It's the online TV show all about people, places and property in Wagga Wagga.